So in this tutorial, I'm going to try to show you how to make a data table using Microsoft Word. I'm going to assume on something like Google Docs, you would do something very similar. It's not hard to figure out how to do this with a little playing around. Right-clicking on a table often give you options that are very, very useful. And then if you're not sure, playing around, you'll eventually get it. So what I'm going to try to reproduce a table like this. I'm not going to worry about entering data. I might not have all the same number of cells, but it's in this general vein where I have a column for an independent variable. I have multiple columns for trials, and then for an average, and then a random error. And then of course we want to be able to label headings in the proper format as per the guide sheet that I gave you in class. If you don't have that guide sheet, there is a document in Schoology under the references folder. Okay, so why don't I start fresh, and I'm going to go to a new document right here, and I'll walk you through each part. So I've got a blank document. So the first thing I want to do is go to Insert, and I'm going to insert a table, and I'll get this type of choice, and I got to decide how many cells or rows and columns I want. And if you choose incorrectly, you can always add or delete. It's not a big deal. So if I'm looking at the hard copy of the table you had before, and I can see that I want to do about 3 columns and 6 rows. So I'm going to go over 3, down 6, click. Alright, so I'm not crazy about the sizing of these, so I can go down here to the corner here and click and drag, and I can make it roughly what I think I want it, and I can always adjust later. Another thing you might want to do, especially if your table is part of a document where you have a bunch of text, is click here, actually right click, go down to table properties, and I want to do text wrapping around. That way I can put text above, below, even to the side without it goofing up the formatting. Okay, so I'm looking at the first column on that reference data table. And you might pause here and get that in front of you so you can see where I'm trying to go and how I got there. So that first column I'm just going to label as distance. You can change the font, you can change the size, whatever you think is appropriate. I want to put the units, and then I want to put the uncertainty. So you want to put delta. So the easiest way to do delta is go to Insert and Symbol. And I've used these symbols here and there over the years, so the delta is already there. If it's not there, you can always search for them right within this, where it says More Symbols. You can search through it, and you can eventually find what you're looking for. So delta x equals, and then I'm going to put, for this particular example, again, I can go to Insert Symbol for the plus or minus sign, and 0.5 centimeters. Okay. So, and then what I would do is, I know I want 5 rows for the data, and I've got those 5 rows. It may be a little bit big for what I want, so I'm going to shorten this, but again, not a big deal. If I go to this borderline here on the column, if I go here and look for a symbol like that, I can then shrink it if I think it's taking up too much space, so I'll do that right now. But again, be aware that you have that option. Alright, so looking at the next thing I want to do is, I've got times, and I want to make 5 columns for the times. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this column, and I'm going to break up now 5 columns by right clicking, and where it says, oh, it doesn't give me that choice. Okay, so as I was looking for split cells, they can allow me to merge. So let me go out of that, and I'm going to go up to layout. Okay, if I go up to layout, it says I can split those cells, and then I can either split it into more columns or more rows. So I want to keep the same number of rows, which is 6, but I want 5 columns. So I'm going to click up to 5. All right, and now I have blanks for 5 different trials, because that's what I decided to do for the experiment. Now up here I want to put the headings, and I don't want all these columns up here, so I'm going to go highlight these, and I'm going to right click, and I am going to merge cells. So now I've got a nice place where I can put heading. So I can put, actually I'm not going to put anything in here. Now if you look even more closely on that sample data table, and again let me refer to it right here, I want to put separate little boxes for the labeling of T1, T2, etc. So what I can do is I can now take this merge cell and I can split it once again, and now I want to split it into I want to keep one column, because that's what essentially it is, but I want 2 rows. Okay, and now I can put my headings up and right here, and now I can take this one and I can split it again. So I'm going to split cells, and now I want 5 columns. So you got to kind of work through the logic in this, and now I can call this T1, T2, etc. Okay, I'm not going to type in all those headings, and of course up here I've got time of flight, ... I'm putting my symbol. I can then put the units, right? And then if I want to put my uncertainty, I press the return button, then I can create more space for myself. And again, I put delta t equals 0.01 seconds. I'll leave that for you to do. All right, so that's pretty much what I have. I've got my column for my independent variable. I've got my columns for my trials. Now I need to make columns for my average and for my random error. Okay, so I'm going to shrink this a little bit. Let's see if I can do that. Bring it in a little bit. I don't need that much width for the average column. Okay, so in here I'm going to type average time. And again, put the units. I might call that T. I'm going to do subscripts, control equals, AVG. All right, control equals, get back. If I don't want it to go to the next line, I'm going to widen this a little bit. Come on now. All right, and then I would put the, all right, when I do that, it goes back to the subscripts. All right, and then I put seconds. And then I can calculate an average for each of the trials here. Okay, so I'm not going to have one big average column. I'm going to have 5 different averages for the 5 different tests I did. Now I need another column for the random error. So I'm going to highlight this column, and I'm going to right click, and where it says insert, I'm going to put insert columns to the right, and notice it formats the same way. I don't want here, so I'm going to merge those, and then I can call this random error. And then I can fill in the individual random errors for each test that I did, and I can put the symbol for it and the fact that it's in seconds. Okay, so that in a nutshell is how you make a pretty nice data table, and it's just a matter of choosing the right number of cells, and if you don't, you can add or delete, and then merging and splitting. Okay, so if you have any questions, come into class and we shall address them.